Hello, everyone. This is your host, Manoj Tandon. Welcome to another episode of Dark Rhino Security Confidential, bringing to you another world-class guest on this program. And before I announce him, I got to remind you folks, show us a little love. Please hit the like and subscribe button. It matters. So just do it so we can keep doing this for you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Chuck Brooks. So Chuck is very well versed in cybersecurity, and I'd encourage our audience to look up his background, but I'll give you a little snippet of it. He is among the top 50 global influencers in risk and compliance as rated by Thomson Reuters. He has advised two presidents. He has served in government, industry, and academia. He's an adjunct professor at Georgetown University. In short, he knows a lot about cyber. And he's going to share a lot of his knowledge with us today in the next 45 minutes or so. So, Chuck, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to a great discussion.
So, Chuck, everybody here loves hearing about the background. Everybody wants to know, how did somebody start off? So where did your journey begin here in cyber?
Sure. Well,
Was this your dream? Or
I'd be happy. Initially, here's the Pennsylvania connection. I was working, but this is even pre-cyber, for Senator Alan Specter on technology and security issues on the Hill for almost a decade. And then when 9/11 happened, I was asked to go over by Governor Ridge to be at the Department of Homeland Security. Now, of course, at that time, it was chemical, biological, rad, nuke, explosives. But cyber had its component. And I worked at what was called the Science and Technology Directorate, and one of my portfolios was early cyber. So I really got interested in that, and that was where it started. I said, we're sort of transforming into a digital world. We're pretty early back then. We weren't even, we can imagine what kind of computers we had. These big.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask, what era was this?
That was in the early 2000s, probably about 2005.
Wow, so just post Y2K.
Yes, post that stuff, and so there was a knowledge of our pending interdependency of digital, but it hadn't really grown. We're still more concerned with what are the physical and terrorism threats, counterterrorism threats. But DHS did work with the labs and start doing this stuff, and I got involved. And afterwards, I went to industry, and part of my portfolio was working for an IT company. At that time, I was vice president, called SRA, which was later bought by General Dynamics. And that's when I really formally got involved in the cyber world. And it continued throughout my career, working in a variety of ones. I was vice president of Homeland Security for Xerox. And I finished my career, not finished because I'm still doing stuff, but on my own terms now. But for General Dynamics Mission Systems, where I was basically a technology scout for cybersecurity. So I've seen it from over 20 years and see it evolve. And it's a really interesting landscape to look at right now.
So since you've had such a deep background here in those early years, when you compare, and this is a question for software OEMs and hardware manufacturers, have you seen material changes in the way they approach system design between back then and today, accounting for cyber?
Yeah, well, they do have. So, it's not uniform, of course. There's a lot of people that cut corners, and most recently now you have enabled AI with a lot of the DevOps. But so I think there's more of an awareness now of before it was just built just to build it, to communicate, which is really the internet was built for that. But now is there is some security in mind, and now in the coming years, since CISA pushed it, security by design was a big software push in the last couple of years. But it's sort of reactive, we're not out ahead of it, and it's growing too quick now with anyone that can pretty much code with an AI program, and it's just it's way out. It's out of hand. So you have to look at the cyber in a different way now. I think that you could try and rein in and get the big boys to play by security by design, but there's plenty of others out there that aren't. So it's but it has been a change.
But even let's say someone is playing by security by design. If you look at the software components and even hardware components, so much is taken off the shelf from open source. And open source it's open source. I mean,
It's
it's
open
really
source.
good,
Yeah.
but it's open
Yeah.
source.
I mean,
So
there's an argument for
what
and
does
against
that
that.
do?
Yeah. Open source is good because often it's checked and there's bugs discovered from being open source. At the same time, it's accessible to anyone, so some players could have access to it. So it's just like everything else with technology. There's a good and bad side. But more recent development is called the software bill of materials, where they're looking
Yes.
at what the ingredients are going into design, and now government has been mandated to do that with the SBOMs. They're going to do it with hardware now too. I think that's a good start because it really goes into knowing what's in your network and what's in your systems and who's got access, and it sort of actually extends beyond that into the zero trust. That happened because we realized our networks were infiltrated pretty thoroughly, and so you have to know, okay, this person's no longer here. Why do they still have access, or what device is this? So I mean, there's so much to it. But you had thought that maybe a few years ago we'd have thought of these things, but now it's sort of okay, we need to do it now, but there's so much to do.
On the same lines here, is there safety in antiquated systems? And I'll give you an example of this. So you might remember, like a lot of the weaponry on some of our fighters was still programmed with software written on the VAX VMS platform, which we of course now know doesn't exist. But they still use an emulator, of course, to program some of those things. But it's antiquated, and that's just one example. Is there safety by operating in some of these antiquated heaps, or is that even more dangerous? Because I know there's people operating on Windows XP still.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Yeah. Well, Windows XP I would not recommend. That is definitely vulnerable. Because a lot of these patches came after that. But you're right. There's something to be said about software obsolescence not being out there. So the bad guys or the hackers that are going after it don't even consider it. However, there's performance issues usually. So you're not you want the newer stuff that's optimized, and some of the newer programs and updates now are more fortified, and both from the hardware and software level. So I think to rely on old antiquated programs and hardware is a risky proposition. For many reasons for that way. But you're right. I mean, if you're looking at, there's talk years ago that, that the Russians weren't upset about the electronic magnetic pulse issues because all their stuff was still tubes and it wouldn't impact, so there's electronics there. So, I mean, you do have, when some of the old obsolescent or antique stuff does work in the legacy programs, but, I think as we move quicker and as AI is now, into the systems and able to discover things, I think it's even more risky now.
I'm glad. So for our audience that's listening, there's a message there for you, especially some of you folks who are operating on really, really old things. Generally speaking, from Chuck, it's a bad idea. So might want to reconsider that. Now, on there was talk, again, getting back to security by design, and since you've been a policymaker here, there was talk about having accountability or criminal accountability for software OEMs who cause breach. And there was a lot of this going on after the SolarWinds attack. And I think somebody there even got prosecuted. Or
yes, I think it was the CIO actually, or got prosecuted. Yeah. Or
yep.
CISO. I'm not sure what the CIO says.
Yeah, CISO or CIO, somebody got prosecuted in that. Is that really going to be a way to push security? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think so, really. I mean, if you look at the average CISO, for instance, I mean, they're overwhelmed. They've got, they got to deal with their budget issues. They got to deal with the technology you have. They got to deal with employees that be coming and going. They're not in the ability to be perfect. Having said that, I think needs to be some parameters to make sure that businesses do uphold some of the basic tenets of cybersecurity. The SEC had that ruling. You have to report in 48 hours. I don't know if they'll still keep it, but things like that at least are incentives to understand that you need to protect your networks and your people. And but to hold the people accountable, I think that's wrong unless they're doing nefarious things and are extreme negligence. And I haven't seen that. Even the solar winds thing was not extreme negligence. That was crafty work by an adversary that got in our networks.
It was
That's
very
what,
well
you know,
engineered.
it's not, and I'm sure there's a lot that's not been discovered yet. So I think with the digital landscape, you have to anticipate that the adversaries are going to somehow get in and breach, you know, at some point. All we want to do is you really need to make yourself less of a lower hanging fruit and have some of the basics in there so you don't become a target. So I think, you know, that's really the mechanism. Most of it's geared towards making money. These are mostly criminal groups. I mean, the state sponsored stuff, you're out of your league if you're a business trying to defend against that. But
Yep.
most of them aren't that. Most of them are criminal groups and people now, you know, going to the dark web and getting a hacking kit or a ransomware kit and using you know an AI program to facilitate the you know send it out all over graphics. You know, it's just
Better yet, they're just doing it all as a service and
they're
just
doing it as a
farming it out in
service.
totality.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and exchanging a little money for convenience.
Yeah, so it went from brick and mortar crime to digital crime, and that's where a lot of this is, and it's easier for criminals because they're more difficult to prosecute, difficult to find, and it takes a lot more resources and cunning to find someone in a different country or sitting in some house somewhere than someone that robbed a bank or a store that you know has a warrant or a record, know what they look like in the camera. It's
Yeah.
a different world. It's a different world for crime.
Yeah. Why do you need to do that? You can get away with a lot more money. No weapons required. No getaway car.
Yes.
No. Yeah.
I think a good example of that was happened. I think it was a year and a half ago in Singapore. Someone did a deep fake on a board meeting and
Yep.
instructed the controller to change an account and send out $40 million.
Yep.
Over a Zoom, I imagine was.
Oh, over a deep fake Zoom call.
Yes, yeah. So that's how it's done now. You know, it's done. You know, we're living that world now. We have to authenticate everything and make sure what we're opening is real and not a fish.
When Homeland Security is looking at cybersecurity risk, how are they thinking about it? And how should a company think about it? Because I'm sure they're two different.
Well, you know, Homeland Security primary focus initially was protecting the infrastructures, you know, the finance, health, energy, transportation, etc. Because it was really more of a state-sponsored attacks, and they still are going on with water and everything else too. And so that was the focus to get these industries to share threat information and to develop basic security against it. However, when dealing with the mom and pop shops and most medium-sized businesses, I think it's really just been education, cybersecurity awareness is what they're pushing, and it's not enough. It's good, it's good, but I think really shows like yours and others are real. It really has to come from the grassroots because it's really a lot of basics we can be doing to stop these kind of attacks and just a knowledge of what the threats are, just to supply them. It's not, you don't have to be a sophisticated programmer or an expert. You just have to know what you need to do and what to protect. And so I think CISA encourages it, but they can't cover every 330 million people and tell them what to do. But they can protect the infrastructure or help protect it.
Well, so a curious thing, if you look at CISA protecting the infrastructure at, I'm going to pick on the electric grid for a little bit.
Okay.
The distribution, the generation guys, those are mega companies, right?
Yes.
So they're putting money into even transmission those are pretty big operations, but there's a lot of distribution that's very localized, right?
Yeah.
That is where the rubber kind of meets. Yeah,
Yeah.
meets the road. How does CISA even protect? There's a ton of them out there for a lot of distributors.
Yeah. Well, you got a good point. I mean, 80% of critical infrastructure is not owned by the government; it's owned by private sector. And so, a lot of these agencies, nuclear's got NERC, they regulate, and the utilities self-regulate too, and they do stuff. But even the grid is owned; it's in three different parts. It's owned by state and local. It's owned by private. It's mixed, and so it's difficult to enforce it, particularly when most of the equipment's 30, 40 years old. And so, the hope is that security by design is you're building in now a better operational technology and IT protocols into a lot of the new replacement of the equipment, but it's still quite vulnerable. And so, maybe, the microgrids and other things are a solution, but it's not just vulnerable to cyber, it's vulnerable to sun flares, it's vulnerable to physical attacks.
Oh yeah, if we
So there's a
had, what
lot of
was that
problems.
event in the 1800s? The big solar flare that shut.
So the Carrington event,
Yes,
the Carrington event. Yes.
if we had one of
Yeah, it took
those.
out. I mean, it took out pretty much all the electrical things. And if we had another one similar to that, very very little of our big areas are protected by for EMP. It could happen again, and it would be devastating. There are stuff that's reinforced, but priority things mostly for the government. But most industry, all these data centers and stuff are wide open for that. Just take them out.
Yeah, it would be terrible. I mean, back then it
It's a
only.
scary scenario. It's a scary
It,
scenario.
it is a very scary scenario. You know, who was it? It was Ted Koppel who wrote the book Lights Out, and one of the things he
Yeah.
points out was one of the biggest problems would be just hygiene, because in the cities, if when you lose power, that's going to be the first thing to suffer, and it'll cause infectious diseases.
Yeah. I mean, there's a study by a former head of CIA, Jim Woolsey,
Okay. Yeah.
who said that it could be, literally millions of people end up, because of those reasons, end up, dying, food shortages, riots, all kinds of stuff. Just not even be able to drive a car, let alone that. So there's a lot of scary stuff. There was actually an EMP commission set up, I think it was 8 years ago, and nothing ever really happened since then. So maybe it gets revisited this time. I don't know. I think a lot of the stuff is better made now, but still, the EMP stuff is, and it's not only have to be from a flare. If a adversary detonated a nuclear bomb in the air over a city, it would have the same effects as the EMP waves knocking everything out. So there's a lot of scary things out there that we're dependent on our digital infrastructure. We need to look at it, everything, the digital, the physical, all the black swan scenarios like we're talking about. And the implications of with disease and famine and all that stuff that come with any kind of natural disaster. So this is a scary world that way.
What You've advised two presidents. What is going on in the Oval Office? What are those guys thinking? Do they understand
Yeah.
the threat, the nature of
Yeah,
it?
I think they're I think it's too early to tell right now. I think their focus is really to promote more of the security on the private sector, less on government, and more on state and local government. I think that's the themes here. State and local government's really been neglected for a long time, and I think that's true because a lot of this stuff is local. I don't know. It's a question of the programs are still in a state of flux. I wouldn't know what the policies are going to be. They also have to deal with AI and cybersecurity, which is a big issue right now. And so we'll have to wait and see. I think what happens to government right now. But CISA is relatively new. It's only 4 or 5 years old. DHS has been here since 2003, but the part with cyber is relatively new, the big part there. So, but I think it's important to protect infrastructure. Their philosophy, I think, is that they need to set up and spend the money. And there's been a reluctance in a lot of these mega groups, to spend money on that. They'll spend it on compliance because they have to. But when it comes to security, they've all been, no, let's not spend money on that. We'll save it and save the money down in our pockets or whatever. But and that's also in the corporate world too. I think there's a parallel too. There's been a lot of corporations in the world that said, oh, cybersecurity, it's just a, it's a cost item, but it isn't a cost. It's a business item now. And if you want to stay in business, you have to have cybersecurity. And I think they're starting to look at now. They're including more experts in the C-suite, which is a good trend. But there's been a lot of I guess slow reaction to cybersecurity among all of corporate America, and I think that's really where I think we need to take control of our own destinies. Is what I'm saying.
Chuck, you said something interesting a minute ago that you said a lot of interesting things, but you just highlighted that people are willing to spend money on compliance, but not cybersecurity. And I can tell you, there's a lot of people that are going to say, "What do you mean? The only reason if we do compliance, if we're compliant, then we got good cybersecurity. We've checked the boxes, man." So how can you say we're
Yeah,
not
well,
spending money on cybersecurity?
Yeah, no, checking the boxes is not security, and that's been a sort of a way out for a long time. I mean, there's certain things you need to do to be compliant, particularly if you're a utility or industry, right? You have certain laws and regulations you have to follow. However, security is a different world, and you can't really check it because it's got to be continuous, right? You can't sit there. I checked this off. We looked at this software and it was fine. I mean, tomorrow it may not be fine. It might be contaminated. So you really have to have a different framework for security for cybersecurity than you do for any kind of compliance. I mean, compliance is a part of an overall picture and a plan and a strategy, but it's not cybersecurity and it's not even security. So I think risk management really needs to focus higher now on the security end of things. And again, everything was built for communication and commerce, not for security. But now when we're dependent on it, and when you could cut it off, the instance that we showed, just even that attacked, on the energy sector a couple of years back, where they had to shut down the whole East Coast, because they thought it was an operational technology. It wasn't. It was an IT thing. But that could happen. I mean, you could really be, if you're a small business, if you're a medium-sized business, and you get breached, and you don't have a security protocols in place or resilience or incident response plan, you're doomed. You're going out of business. And I think more businesses need to look at this and take that step, or at least get a general expertise or understanding of what the threats are and how they should react to threats and what they need to do if something does happen.
So, now that is easier said than done. So if you were to break
Yes.
that elephant down into smaller digestible pieces, what is some of the blocking and tackling that you think really needs to take place from a risk perspective when you're looking at risk and defining risk?
Yeah. Well, so there's two things. One is that if you're a company, the first thing you want to do is you want to use probably an outside group to come in and see where your vulnerabilities are. If you have a network and a system, you're not going to know itself. Do vulnerability testing, etc. But that'd be a product of it. What you really need to do is instill the basics in your employees and yourself, and that is cyber hygiene in a nutshell. I mean, you need to have because of the prevalence of deep fakes and phishing and stuff, you need to have multi-factor authentication, probably more sophisticated multi-factor authentication that now is AI is now introduced in the system. You need to have your routers and your endpoints secure. You need to have strong passwords. Passwords are still the easiest thing breached, and they do it all the time. So you need to have that too, and you need to have backup. I think one thing that businesses don't do is they don't segment their real important data, and they need to do that because ransomware attacks are how these guys make money. They do a phishing attack. They get you. They freeze your data. They steal your data, and you can't get it back. And if you do get it back, it's already been sold to someone else. So and you got to hit the payment in cryptocurrencies. You can't difficult to get them. So what you need to do is you have to have all this stuff in place, assuming something's going to happen. Not saying I'm just going to play the odds and say nothing's going to happen to me. I'm too small. No one's too small anymore. Everyone can be discovered on the internet, and particularly with the AI propagation and automation of attacks, they go everywhere. And if you notice, probably if you're watching this, you probably in the last year or so started getting a lot more phishing attacks and text messaging attacks. Because they're done automated now. They're easy to do, and a lot of them don't get picked up by spam filters. So, that's why you need to really look at the basics again. What can I do without spending a lot of money, but know how to do right away? And then when you do all that, then you look at, okay, now do I need encryption? Do I need business encryption? Do I need 360 monitoring of my? It depends what kind of business you're in. But there's a lot of variables. But everything there's no one specific way to do a risk management, but you need to at least do the basics. And then if you think you're at risk, or if you're in a supply chain with a big vendor that requires it, you need to be able to do what you need to do to keep your business.
Yeah. I mean, we're always reminded it was the HVAC guy that breached Target.
Yes.
Somebody totally unrelated, had nothing to do with selling clothes or groceries or whatever.
It's often the case. And now with the Internet of Things connected to everything, it's even easier for these guys.
Oh yeah,
everyone's.
See, some of that stuff you got to. Yeah, Chuck, have you ever gone through and read like your TV's license agreement or your refrigerator's license agreement? I mean, that stuff. I have to do an episode on that because you're basically consenting to giving away a ton of data in there.
You're doing that, and you also, when you go on social media, you're doing the same thing. If you're going on Facebook or Instagram or even LinkedIn or any of them, you're doing the same thing. You're really pretty much giving up your data. I mean, LinkedIn is not so much with ads and stuff, but if you really go on some of these other social networks, your data is, the minute you buy something, the minute you click on something, it's sold to someone else, and so they know everything about you. So you give up all, and no one reads the fine print. You're right.
No,
No.
there's some scary, scary stuff in there. We'll come back to that one, but I wanted to really go back to, this basic hygiene that you're talking about. Is there is there recognition, you think, by the business leaders and folks, financial people, people who are decision makers, that these things need to be done, or what's a resistance here to causing them from not being done? Maybe that's the
I think it's getting better. It's still not where it should be. I think what the resistance has been, again, is they look at it as a cost item, like IT. Well, we don't want to spend money on that when we could do marketing or sales or, that kind of thing. Attitude from the C-suite. Instead of doing that, now I think a few of that they brought, well, first of all, a lot of them have been hit. You could just look at the health industry. I mean, look at change healthcare, and all these. I mean, they're so prevalent that they can't ignore it anymore. And then there's also a liability issue. People just think, okay, well, what could they do? They can steal my data, but it's more than that. They can steal your reputation. They can cause legal issues. There's all kinds of implications of being hacked, and you have responsibility then to the people that you have in your network that you're selling your products to, that your customers are, or your vendors. So you have a lot more at stake than people realize. And I think businesses are slowly coming to the realization that, this isn't just a game anymore. This is, we're not just going to pass on the cost, or we're not going to do this. This is life and death for our operations.
Chuck, you brought up Change Health. Those guys, I don't know. I so and I think maybe they're the poster child for the problem with healthcare, at least with cybersecurity. I won't even pick on the other stuff, but I think they paid out 22 million the first time, and then they got hit again, and
Yeah,
they paid out another 20 million simoleons. So you know,
it's way more than that now, and they have lawsuits
yeah,
too, and
yeah,
multi-billion.
and
Yeah,
you look at that, and you're like, I am sure if their CISO went to them and said, "I'd like a budget of $15 million to do A, B, C, D, E, and all this," they probably said, "No, we're going to go buy
yeah,
an MRI machine. We're going to go buy
exactly.
right." And then the argument will be, "Well, that's life-saving technology." I guess my counter would be, if you ain't running, you ain't saving lives. So,
Yeah. And you're also putting lives
and
at
you're putting
risk.
lives at
You can
risk.
change that. Yeah, yeah, you can change those devices pretty
And
easily in a lot of
the
hospitals.
point is that I'm sure they said, we don't have budget for these things, but they had the
Yeah.
budget to pay the ransom. So what
Yes,
gives?
that they did have budget,
This
and there's
bullshit.
well, I think there's I think COVID really opened up that door. The bad guys who are also very nefarious targeted healthcare because they knew they'd pay, right? They had no choice. And so a lot of these hospitals, for the exact reason you just said, they never had any budgets. A lot of them didn't even have a CISO. Now there's some of the big groups now are owned by businesses, and they're doing that because they have liability to patients. But it's not easy to protect the hospital and healthcare network because you have a lot of disparate networks in there. You got the nurses, the doctors, the devices, the patients, the administration, and so you really need a really strong risk management approach to this to understand discovery of what's in your network. But of all the places that are targeted, that's like one of the number one constantly. It's always financial and health are the first two that are targeted because that's where the money is, and they know they're going to get
And,
it.
and
So
that's some good data, because once you have patient data, you can replicate the identity.
you can, yes,
You know?
and even more so now with stealing DNA like 23andMe, you can do more than
Oh
replicate the
yeah.
patient. Yeah,
See, and,
yeah,
and that's another thing. Like when you're signing up
yeah,
for some of these things, again, but if you read the
yeah,
end user agreement in that,
yeah,
you they kind of absolved themselves not of everything, but a
yeah.
ton of
They do.
liability.
Yeah. Although if it's negligence, it's still negligence, and there's always a case against negligence. But you're right. They try to do up front. They have good lawyers, and they approach that and protect it. Most of the big companies do, and that's how they try and get around it. But it just shows, it just demonstrates how easy everything is now to get to. Because there's no barriers in a lot of these companies, and even though 23andMe you think would have the best CISOs and people equipment because they're a global thing and they're collecting sensitive data on people. No, I mean they were hacked first before they even.
So, do you think there's a role here for Congress? Is there a policy decision that can be made to, like, first of all, get rid of some of these loopholes that say, well, okay, Manoj, you signed away this stuff in your end user license agreement, so
I think there's definitely a loop there, but our system of government is a difficult one. It's slow. It's also competing. You have these companies that are also taking the data for marketing that they want to protect that. They know we want to be able to get that data. And the other thing is there's a lack of understanding in technologies generally in Congress. It has been. They used to have an Office of Technology Assessment about, I think it was 30 years ago, and they got rid of it. They said, well, we don't need to know that. We know it's everything about technology we need to know. Yeah. And the fact is that, we've got a lot of people that have no background in IT, no background in any kind of tech throughout Congress. And it just doesn't address a lot of the gaps that we need to do. And every time you see these people come and testify, it's clear that the questions that are being asked that they don't know anything. I don't know. We should be doing more. Yes, is your answer, and we should be looking at areas to do this. But maybe we have to bring back that Office of Technology Assessment and look at, because we're going into a different age now, right?
Oh yeah,
we're moving into AI and quantum age, and a space age where everything is through sensors now. So, we're in the future now. We're not in the operating like we did, 20 years ago, where it was a big deal to have a phone.
See, now we're getting to a place, electric vehicles, self-driving, these genies are all out of the bottle. And you hack those systems or networks, you could really cause, it's life-threatening. I mean, you make a car not stop.
Yeah, and you can do planes too. I mean, they hack planes.
Well, the thing with airplanes, Chuck, this was interesting. It used to be, I don't know, my data is now, it's been eons since I was in that industry. But it used to be like the engine control software on airliners. Each airplane used to have a stack of disks, and and the chain of custody of those disks was verified. And if you were updating engine control software, you did it that way. That was very secure, right?
Very secure because it's not connected to the outside world.
It wasn't connected. But now you look at whether it's Boeing or Airbus, you have all the sensors on these airplanes that are relaying to the service centers what's going on. Well, if it's relaying it out, there's definitely a way in.
Yeah. No, there is. I think there's now. I know there's conferences on aerospace and airline security, but I don't think they've really focused on it just like anything else because it's not their focus of money.
Yeah.
So it's just it'll happen, and then all of a sudden they'll all be involved in it. But I mean, there's already been demonstrations how easy it is to hack into it by hackers.
Oh, really?
But satellites too. Yeah, just even at there's been a few of those where they've done that, and they went in through the entertainment system, I think, on one of them. But with satellites too, they were able to hack a satellite. I think it was Black Hat a couple years ago in Las Vegas. They hacked a satellite as a test. So these things are not really fortified for cybersecurity. That we put them up there without that in mind, and same with planes. But I think again, go back to our world here. We just got to really rethink everything. We're all working on open air communications, and these communications have to either be encrypted or done something or fortified, and have some fail safes in them because it's just too easy. And you don't have to be a state sponsored country to do that, or even one of these criminal groups. Someone that's way down the ladder somehow is going to be able to do this. And that's the frightening thing.
Oh, absolutely. This you could have lone wolves, not one wolf, out there.
Yes.
There's some That's the one part that the adversary, I often see people underestimate them. This is not your run of the mill, mugger that's walking Central Park. These people generally have a pretty high IQ, know these
They do.
systems really, really well, and are
Yes.
designing, they're actually architecting these attacks. And there's an intelligence behind this that is, not your average.
They recruit the best and the brightest in a lot of these criminal gangs out there in Eastern Europe,
Oh, really?
and they're paying very well, and they do very well too. And they also, they live like kings, and so
As long as they don't
you know,
travel to a NATO nation, although I don't know what that means anymore.
no,
But
but I mean, if they're detected, who knows? I mean, they'd have to, a lot of this stuff is they run it like intelligence. They keep it quiet. They don't use real identities. A lot of it is connected to intelligence, by the way, particularly with the Russia side. I mean, it's a partnership. So, and with the Chinese, of course, too. But these criminal gangs, they bring in a lot of money in, and so a lot of the places they're going to go where the money is. It's just like why they rob banks, they go where the money is. So, not unexpected.
what do you see with AI? How do we fortify against that, or
Yeah,
what do we do,
or fortify with it.
or fortify
Yeah.
with it?
Yes, I mean you bring up. I actually wrote a book this year, and it's sitting behind me. It's called Inside Cyber, and it's how AI, quantum, 5G, and IoT are going to impact privacy and security. One of the areas that's biggest, and everyone recognizes it now, is obviously AI. And AI has changed the whole landscape. And what's done on the bad side first is it's enabled a lot of these hacking groups and hackers to basically, create threats or malware that are much more potent and much more automated and have reached many, many more targets than they had before. And they've also developed polymorphic malware, which is able to get through some of the detections of more sophisticated defenses. So AI is really, enabled also, and going back to the person that's just at the bottom there, that some kid in high school could go to the dark web, get a hacking toolkit, and combine it with a Chat GPT or some other model and do a very good phishing attack. So, there's no limitations now on AI and cyber threats. Now, on the other side of the coin is that it's also automated a lot of the cybersecurity defenses. A lot of the threat detection now can be coordinated and synthesized. False positives also assisted in that, and then report writing, which is a larger part of what analysts do. They could do it in 30 minutes what it did in a day and a half for someone else. So there's some positives to it too, and it also can recognize anomalies in the network. But it's a cat and mouse game, right? And not everyone has AI for defense, particularly small and medium businesses.
Yeah, but it sounds like you need to get that robot, because this is becoming a game of robot versus robot.
It really is. It really
I
is.
mean, I don't. Way back when there was a cartoon, the Jetsons. I'm sure a lot of listeners may
Yes,
not
of
remember
course.
the Jetsons, but you obviously do, Chuck. But there was an
Yes.
episode where they were playing a football game, and all the players were robots, and it was the coaches just doing strategy. That's where all the
Yes, yeah, and we're not far off. Look at the military now; we're using drones and robots
yeah.
there. Which is better probably because we're not using lives. But you're right. We're there, and the humanoid robot that they had there is not far off either. There's humanoid robots now that are getting smarter and more capable and more lifelike. So we're in that era, the beginning of it. We don't have the flying planes yet, but we could.
We could. I mean, there's really not a technology limitation that's preventing that. I think it's
A
psychological and
massive
human
regulation.
factors. I'm just going to say human
Yeah,
factors.
yeah. We have enough time, hard enough time driving and keeping safe, let alone being up and flying everywhere.
What else is in your book, Inside Cyber?
Well, I do go into the quantum world too, and that's another thing. People always with AI, it just all of a sudden erupted when Chat GPT came out a couple of years ago, and now you're talking about agentic AI and enabling the human agents going out and helping things. But the problem with the way we look at technology and the way we look at cybersecurity is we look at it after it's sort of too late. And so my book was hopefully to educate, hey, listen, these are on the horizon or they're here. And with quantum, saying, oh, it's going to be 10, 15 years away. It's not quantum is not monolithic. It's not just a big gateway computer that's going to be a super computer, which is going to happen at some point, and there's a race to that. But quantum has algorithms right now. They have, random number generators. They have quantum sensors. All that stuff is already here. Photonics, which is photonic computing, which is quantum, right? That's already doable. So we have to look at these technologies and the threats they place on our networks and our commerce in our critical infrastructure. And we're starting to do it. We're just reacting to it to AI. But we better look forward with quantum, because that's going to be basically, once you be able to decrypt all the data that's out there, you're going to have a tremendous superpower, and you're going to be able to have the power of a million supercomputers at your hand. And, so this is technology that's within our lifetimes and soon. So we need to look at it now. We need to look at the implications. And then you look at the mesh of AI and quantum, and you have a superpower. You have a super civilization. So, this and with all the 5G and 6G coming down, and, that we're in a different world pretty soon, and it's going to impact medicine. What we're doing with CRISPRs, with drug discovery, material science, everything you can think of is going to be changed radically. And it's starting to go that direction now.
I think a lot of the traditional jobs that people think about will not exist. That's just my prediction on all this. And you were describing the way some of the things you're describing, even some of the knowledge workers as we know them today, those white collar jobs are going to go bye-bye.
Yeah, I think they are with AI already. They're starting to automating a lot of the robotic process automation. A lot of these different functions that we do in factories now are gone. There needs to be a retraining and understanding of where humans will fit. I think we're still a little away from that. We're really become obsolete, but it could happen fast.
You know what? I'm going to steal that, retraining humans on where we fit. I'm stealing that from you.
Okay.
That is actually a very good description, because you look at the sentiments right now around manufacturing and bringing it back. And I'm not saying we shouldn't manufacture things here, but when it does come back, it's not going to have 1,000 greasy men working an assembly line.
You're exactly right. It doesn't in China either right now. They have more automation than we do. They have factories where they have like 2 robots, just doing everything.
So yeah, it's not going to be the same thing. And that should be a leading indicator of some of the things that you're just talking about. It's not going back to the Industrial Revolution and, the 1950s manufacturing where everybody worked a line or worked a job of some kind. A lot of those things can be replaced. And as a businessman, you care about throughput. You don't care about job creation per se. I mean, that's a good political thing to talk about.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a question of where all these people are going to fit in and what kind of economies and governments you'll need to have this. I think that's, I think there's still cybersecurity. There's always going to be a security role, and there still needs to be human in the loop with all these technologies. But, it can't be all engineers and scientists running the top things and no one else doing anything. So I don't know where it goes.
I don't know either. But it's you raised some interesting things like photonic computing. Just real quick, what exactly is that?
Well, it's just using light. As when you use quantum, you're using these qubits, which are pretty much unstable, parts of physics. Elements, but with photonics, they're stable. You don't need to have a cooled. It just operates off, instead of a digital XO stuff. It operates off the light. Its function. But there's also chemical and biological.
You can't hack that, because if you observe it, is it a particle or is it a wave? I mean.
Well, lights are, that's right. There's a debate there, right?
So the observer changes. It's hacking that thing becomes very, the Israelis developed an optical communication system based off of that premise.
They have, yeah. There's some really interesting technologies coming out of there. I've seen a few of them, including cyber, that are just sort of out of the box, which is really pretty cool.
I would like to I'm going to get a copy of your book. I'm going to have to figure out a way to get it to you so you can sign it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You send me your address, and I'll send you a book.
Yeah, that's I got to read it now. So are you? What are you teaching then in at Georgetown? What's the college
Well, it's
curriculum?
interesting. Yeah, I'm in a program called Cybersecurity Risk Management. In my program, the course which I wrote and developed is called Disruptive Technologies.
Okay.
And I look at all these technologies, but I also look at them from the security element too, but also in the commercialization part of it. What's feasible, where industry is going, and then looking at AI, all different types of generative AI and all these other different things. So the thing about this course, though, I wrote it 8 years ago, and I've had to change it every year because it gets outdated. So it's a lot of work every summer recreating the curriculum and going through all the content, but and new content. But it's moving that fast, and just it's pretty interesting to see. When I look back when I was talking about 8 years ago when I started designing this thing, and now it's a completely different function, particularly with AI. I mean, it just took off. And it's been here. But it just took off.
Yeah, the rate at which it got accepted was incredible, right? That was
Yes.
the big deal. And then the compute power has come up to where it's made it usable and applicable to practical problems on a
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, there's an analogy that what's in a phone was enough. It was more computing power than when the whole Apollo program was
Oh,
setting
well,
people to the moon.
you remember the old Cray YMP?
Yeah, yeah,
Right? That machine was cooled in oil. It was like, and it looked like a sofa. I remember the thing was huge. It was massive. You needed a right. This iPhone has more compute power than the Cray YMP,
pretty
and that was
amazing.
millions of dollars, right?
Yes,
And this thing
yes,
is nowhere near that. The magic of VLSI, very large,
yes, yeah,
integration, right? So
yeah.
we have
And now, if you look where that's going. If you look, it's getting into the basically the meshing of the brain and machine. We're now able to download things into our mind. You get people that can't speak now; you can translate their thoughts, move items. It's pretty incredible where we're going in this whole, area of neurological technology. So,
Chuck, sounds like you should be writing a science fiction book. Do a
yeah, although it's not
basketball.
science fiction anymore. Yeah,
But
it's reality.
only now it's not
Unfortunately,
science fiction.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fun. That's where I think part of my thing. What I do when I teach this course is I'm always looking for interesting angles on technology and where it's going, and this stuff with the Neuralink and other places are pretty amazing when you think about it. So you're looking at the phone, and eventually I can see a world where they just put it in the first start. They're going the glasses and contacts, but they're going to probably just directly implant in your brain at some point. So it'll be like the Matrix almost.
That's scary.
It is scary.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that should remain private.
Yeah.
That.
Well, there's a lot of ethical dimensions to artificial intelligence, and always the debate whether it'll become sentient or become too powerful. I mean, you can always unplug it, right? But
Well, maybe not. Look what happened to
maybe
Terminator.
not. They'll make it. Yeah,
It
yeah,
realized, so it was like I got to get rid of these
right.
minions. Uh,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Artificial general sentence. I don't know. I think that's a whole different ball game.
It's a different thing, but I think it parallels our discovery of the mind. Where I think it will be a combination of a brain and a machine, and that's what will happen. But it's right. It may be in the 2075 era, not 25, but 50 years from now.
Well, I won't
It's
have to
not.
worry
It's
about that problem.
Yeah, neither will I.
That's going to be someone.
Unless they come with a longevity thing where Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Simpsons episode where that billionaire he puts his brain in a jar and it's connected to a machine and he just lives forever.
It lives forever. Yeah, yeah.
Hey, so Chuck, we're at the hour here. I want to give you a chance. Anything you want to plug? Let people know about.
Well, I mean, my book is out. You could get it on Amazon or any Barnes and Noble. But I think just follow me on LinkedIn. I do post and write a lot. I write for Forbes too, And some of these topics we're talking about today, I've written a lot about. They're on my LinkedIn profile, and I've already I think I have 124,000 followers now, so I have no room to accept new ones. But you can follow me easily.
I was going to say, isn't there a limit on LinkedIn as to how many?
30,000 people first connections, and the rest have to follow. So it's just I mean, it's a lot, and it means I got a lot of in-mails. So, but LinkedIn, I'm a big proponent of it. I used it for business intelligence early on in my career to see who I was meeting with and where they went to school and what their backgrounds were. So I think it's valuable. It's a professional. Social media can be a dangerous area and be too manipulative, but LinkedIn at least is a forum where I think there's a lot of good information shared on cybersecurity and technology.
We post there all the time. I don't know if there's people reading it, but we sure as heck post there all the time.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Share your posts with me, and I'll share them to my followers.
We'd love to do that, Chuck. I think we've just scratched the surface on some of these topics. I am going to get your book, and then I'd like to get you back, and I'd like to take a deep dive into some of those. There's some very interesting topics that you have talked about. But it was fantastic having you, and thank you for giving us a generous hour here.
My pleasure, and look forward to coming back.
Sounds good, Chuck. Take care.
Take care.